Tonight, we bring you what seems to be the new Republican campaign strategy and talking point. And what I'm about to say may surprise some of you. That campaign strategy and talking point is acceptance and tolerance. Yes, that's right, acceptance and tolerance. It seems will dominate the GOP's public messaging straight through the 2022 midterms, all the way, at least through the 2024 general election. Has the GOP turned over a new leaf? Have recent events caused a complete 180 turn of their local, state, national, and seems sometimes international push for authoritarian fascism? Unfortunately, the answer is a resounding and firm no. Acceptance and tolerance. The Republican Party will accept and tolerate mass shootings and the slaughter of children across this country as young as 6 years old. The Republican Party will accept and tolerate racism and white nationalism, whether or not it leads to violence and murder. The Republican Party will accept and tolerate a small minority of evangelical Christian nationals who want to overthrow the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and turn anyone with a uterus into a second-class citizen by state law and dictate, or in some cases, outright ban sex. All sex. No, not sexes. Just sex in general. All of it. The Republican Party will accept and tolerate states' rights to overthrow the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and, in part, at least, the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution securing equal protection with regard to voting. But one can imagine how far some of these folks I mentioned earlier would really like to take those restrictions. And finally, the Republican Party will accept and tolerate states' rights to suppress and circumvent the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution regarding freedom of speech, the press, and freedom of and from religion. Acceptance, tolerance. This will be the GOP campaign promise moving forward until at least 2024.
See, the implication of this bill is that all people are bad, that there's this great and worrisome thing that is infecting America, when the opposite is true. I was born in the 1960s. Every decade has gotten better. People get along better. We have more intermarriage between races. We have more integration within churches. We have all. I see less and less of this that everybody's saying is now infecting us. But they don't realize that they're insulting everyone.
Senator Rand Van Winkle, speaking in opposition to H.R. 350, the domestic terrorism prevention bill. Of course, speaking to the Senate after his recovery from a 21-year coma. Chuck Schumer also spoke to the Senate advocating for gun control in the wake of the Uvalde elementary school shooting that we covered on this program just 2 days ago. Let's take a look.
Please, 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 damn it, put yourself in the shoes of these parents for once. Maybe that thought, putting yourself in the shoes of these parents instead of in the arms of the NRA, might let you wriggle free from the vice-like grip of the NRA, might free you to act on even a simple measure. For the sake of these children, these 9-year-olds, these 10-year-olds, these 11-year-olds, these beautiful children, please, damn it, please, think if it was your child or grandchild.
Utah Senator Mike Lee speaking in opposition to gun control and ultimately his defense of the NRA's position regarding annual sales quotas of firearms manufacturers.
Every time one of these tragedies occurs, I think we for far too long just failed to look back at the root causes of rampage violence. Questions involving things like why is our culture suddenly producing so many young men who want to murder innocent people? raises questions like, could things like fatherlessness, the breakdown of families, isolation from civil society, or the glorification of violence be contributing factors? Instead, the left, once again, is calling for more gun control. They want to crack down on law-abiding Americans and federal firearms licensees who want to follow the law instead of armed criminals.
Fatherless, broken families, he says. What he isn't saying is poverty. Poverty being the number one cause, statistically speaking, of becoming a victim of violent crimes. Unfortunately, the GOP, for Republicans, poverty is not something that they are willing to accept and tolerate. Bootstraps and whatnot. But speaking right down the middle, it does seem that with inaction, there will be more and more fatherless and then ultimately later childless families across the country. But that, again, is not something they're willing to discuss. But that isn't fair to say. Republicans are responding to this tragedy, but they're again doing it in the spirit of acceptance and tolerance.
How would you fortify some of these most soft targets that we have in our world right now, elementary schools and schools in general?
We have to harden the schools, make them harder targets.
We've heard it countless times where teachers went in and they were the human shield.
My Bella, like your son, this morning, she said, "Mom, don't worry, I know where all the exits are."
The little ones can't run, hide, fight. You can't do that with the little ones. They don't have the acumen and the wherewithal to do that.
Jonathan, this is, obviously the second mass shooting in less than 2 weeks.
And the parents have to show courage if they want their children to show courage.
So, coming up, this massacre here, especially hard for parents who have lost their children in other mass shootings.
Fortifying soft targets and turning them into hard targets. They're talking about kids here, folks. And perhaps they're right. If the liberals hadn't stolen the election, Donald Trump could have signed an executive order to coat children aged 5 through 17 in diamond-crusted platinum. Now, the good news is they know where all the exits are. They train for this kind of thing. Little 5-year-old Marines, right? The little ones can't run, hide, fight. And see, this is the problem. What we need is child soldiers. Forget education. If kindergarten kids, what they need is more munitions and more training in order to be effective and combat ready. The parents have to show courage if they want their kids to show courage. What they really mean is it's the parents' fault. It's your fault for being a weenie baby. Clearly, the solution to school shootings is the militarism of parents and 5-year-olds. The parents have to show courage if they want children to show courage, is what they're saying. What they aren't saying is that the parents have to show courage if they want their children to live. Or rather, the parents have to accept and tolerate the sacrifice of their children for the NRA because that sweet, sweet cash just tastes so damn good. Representative Tony Gonzalez from Texas says,
"You can't buy a beer when you're 18 years old. Why do you need to be able to buy an assault rifle?"
I think part of the conversation, we have to be unified. This country is not unified.
I want to go back to my original question. Why does an 18-year-old in Texas need to be able to buy an assault rifle?
The reality is this isn't a new topic. There has been a lot of legislation that's been out there.
You haven't answered my question, though. Why does an 18-year-old need an AR-15 in the state of Texas?
So this is how the legislative process works, is Congress determines the laws. Right now, we have a Congress that won't talk to one another. There's so much rhetoric and hate.
School shootings happen because we aren't unified. Democrats just need to vote on everything that Republicans want to push through, and then, and only then, will your children truly be safe. There's been a lot of legislation out there. We keep making it easier for people to get access to firearms, but for some reason, enough good people just aren't buying them. What we need is more of the people who don't currently own guns to be able to easily get access to them so that we can assure that there are more good guys with guns so we can be the safest place on earth, just like the NRA meeting tomorrow night in Texas. They are allowing guns at the NRA event, right? I mean, Donald Trump, and the governor of Texas, governor of South Dakota, a bunch of senators going to be there. Ted Cruz is going to be there. I mean, they need him. They need more guns for more safety at the NRA meeting tomorrow, right? Speaking of which, next we have NRA Speaker and U.S. Senator Teen Wolf Cruz getting jumped and caught off guard by a bunch of foreign liberals. Let's take a look.
There are 19 sets of parents who are never going to get to kiss their child goodnight again.
Is this the moment to reform gun laws?
You know, it's easy to go to politics.
But it's important. It's at the heart of the issue.
I get that that's where the media likes to go.
No, it's not. It's where many of the people we've talked to here like to go.
The proposals from Democrats in the media, inevitably, when some violent psychopath murders people.
A violent psychopath who's able to get a weapon so easily. 18-year-old with 2 AR-15s.
If you want to stop violent crime, the proposals the Democrats have, none of them would have stopped this.
But why does this only happen in your country? I really think that's what many people around the world just, they cannot fathom. Why only in America? Why is this American exceptionalism so awful?
You know, I'm sorry you think American exceptionalism is awful.
I think this aspect of it.
You got your political agenda.
No, it's honestly,
God love you.
Senator, it's not. I just want to understand why you do not think that guns are the problem.
Why is this just an American problem?
Well, it is just an American problem, sir.
Mr. Cruz, why is America the only country that faces this kind of mass shooting?
But you can't answer that. You can't answer that, can you, sir? You can't answer that. Why is this?
Why is it that people come from all over the world to America? Because it's the freest, most prosperous, safest country on earth.
It may be the freest, it may be the most.
Why are our kids dying in school?
Safest country on earth. I mean, you heard it from Senator Teen Wolf. What else can I say? You know, take a look at the statistics. I think you'll be quite surprised. Perhaps not. So, Regional Director of the Texas Department of Public Safety, just speaking of arming schools and turning soft targets into hard, crunchy targets. Regional Director of the Texas Department of Public Safety, Victor Escalon, held a press conference around noon today, I caught it, with a confident start to answer questions from reporters regarding law enforcement's response to the Uvalde school shooting and to put to rest some troubling accusations made by witnesses on the scene. Let's take a look.
It was reported that a school district police officer confronted the suspect that was making entry. Not accurate. He walked in unobstructed initially. So from the grandmother's house to the bar ditch to the school, into the school, he was not confronted by anybody. To clear the record on that. 4 minutes later, law enforcement coming in to solve this problem. It was reported.
Well, that's good. You know, law enforcement weren't there, obviously, from the, his home when no crimes were being committed up until, there was a crime committed. And then he drove to the school and then obviously ran inside the school. No law enforcement were there for any of that, obviously, and good. And then what did he say? Within 4 minutes, law enforcement were on the scene to solve the problem. That's good. That's good stuff. That's good to hear. Now, listen, I should inform you that there have been videos circulating on social media forums and credible reports that officers were at first somewhat reluctant to move in on the shooter, and that parents that had arrived on the scene were urging law enforcement to go in after him. Wall Street Journal reported that one mother of two at the school who demanded enough time for someone to hear about it, drive to the school. A mother of two students at the school showed up and demanded that police, who she says were outside, standing behind the fence at the school, she demanded that they go in and do anything besides, stand there behind the fence while it was happening, while an active shooting of children was taking place for however long we're about to hear about it, I guess. She was placed in handcuffs by police for what they said was, or what she claims they said was, intervening in an investigation. We've heard that before. She was later freed of her handcuffs, where she jumped the fence, ran inside the school, and Wall Street Journal reports sprinted back outside with her two children. Here's about the shooting. Imagine if this is you. You hear there's a shooting. It's at your kid's school. Your kid's in school. You go there, cops standing outside, hanging around a fence, picking their noses or whatever. Whatever it is that they're doing. Whatever it is that these, again, this is a small town. It's what, 16,000 people? You know what cops in towns of 16,000 people are like. I know you do. If you don't, come see me sometime. We'll take the drive around at about 8 o'clock at night and see how long it takes before you get pulled over, right? So look, if you're wondering what some of these questions are about in this press conference, or at the end of this press conference, this is it.
Based on the information you have so far, sir, should the officers have gone in sooner? Should they have waited for those tactical teams, or should they have gone right in?
That's a tough question. Again, it goes back. Our job is to report the facts. And later we can answer those questions.
Based on what you know so far, should those officers...
I don't have enough information to answer that question just yet. One more question, please.
Well, is it accurate that eyewitnesses and potentially parents of the students were urging the police to go in while you were waiting for a tactical SWAT team, even that some parents were asking to borrow police armor so they could make a counter-assault on the school?
I have heard that information, but we have not verified that yet. So,
what part haven't you verified?
We have not verified is that a true statement or not, or is it just rumor out there? So you got to understand, we're getting a lot of information. We're trying to track down and see what is true. We want to vet it. That's all I have for questions. Thank you so much.
Well, I think we all want to know what's true at this point. It isn't a tough question. I mean, it isn't. He could have came out and said anything. He could have said, look, we don't have all the answers as to what happened, but if that's the case, then such and such and such and such. I mean, it isn't a tough question. They have a job to do. That's what they're paid for. That's what all this pro-cop propaganda is all about, because the job is supposed to be dangerous. If these cops can't handle their job, they need to quit now, effective immediately. It either is or isn't dangerous to be a cop. And if it isn't dangerous to be a cop because you're unwilling to do your job, and that's really all he had to say. That's really the only answer to this. is that if these statements are true, then every one of those officers on the scene who refused to put themselves in harm's way, to make themselves, to draw attention from an active shooter away from children, should turn in their badge and their gun immediately. And look, my grandfather, you know, I think I might have mentioned this on this channel before, was a service member, military police, retired military, retired law enforcement, never drew a service weapon, never had to shoot anybody, worked Haight-Ashbury during the 1960s. Somehow, never had to pull a gun. Different times, I guess. Which, I mean, that might go against sort of what Rand Paul was talking about. Things is get better, not so much worse. But, you know, that's another story. But yeah, look, if you're one of these back the blue people, back the blue. But don't back this. I guess we don't know if it's true yet. I guess. But if it comes out, that's what happened. Every single police officer who wouldn't draw attention away from an active shooter from children, elementary school children, doesn't need to be in that position. And if you're one of those folks who backs the blue and somehow finds it in your heart beyond me. It's beyond me. We're gonna take a short break, jump right back into it. I want to thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate the people who are following me on Twitter at ChainsawCCC. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. I am very interested to hear your thoughts on these and other issues. If you enjoy what we're doing here in rural Missouri and want to support independent progressive media from the hills and wilderness of the Ozarks, consider going to patreon.com/ChainsawCCC and becoming a Patreon supporter. You can support independent media for as little as $3 per month. That's half the cost of a loaded tea per month. Thank you again, and we'll catch you on the flippity fling flong. Rock and roll.